Now normally I'd start a review by walking around the car, checking out the interior and then going for a drive, but let's be honest, you just want to see what this car is like out on the road, and I think that's fair enough. So that's right where we're going to start. We're going to find ourselves a nice set of twisties. We're going to open it up, hear what this car is all about rather than just see what this car is all about, because honestly the 6.2 litre V8 in here, which is just behind my head, is absolutely epic. This car is just so much fun. It is ridiculous, the sound, the speed that it builds. We'll just calm down a little bit now. So needless to say, I really like this car. And actually there's more twisties, so let's not calm down. Let's actually drop the window for you so you can hear it. That is just so violent. I absolutely love it. This car just puts a massive smile on your face. Let's just try and be a little bit grown up about this for 2 seconds. 6.2 litre V8, making near enough makes no difference, 500 horsepower. And I have to say, it's an awesome amount of power because it propels this thing 0 to 100 allegedly in 2.9 seconds. The best that I've managed to do with my time in the Corvette is 3.3 seconds. That's still very quick. That's enough to really make you pay attention to what's going on around you. It also means you get into numbers that are very scary, very fast. Thankfully though, the brakes on the Corvette are up to task as well, and they pull you up really, really quickly. Driving this car is an event. Even just rolling along in traffic, the amount of looks, the amount of thumbs up I get, I've never had that before, ever, in any car. Case in point, just before I started filming this, I had a lovely chat with a guy for about 15 minutes about the Corvette. Terry, if you've managed to find this video, g'day legend. It's just a car that people want to know about, they want to talk about. And I think the most common comment that I've had this week is that it looks like the Batmobile. And you know what? Fair call, I can see that. We have an 8-speed dual clutch automatic. We can use these shifter paddles that are wheel mounted and they do a fantastic job. They're very snappy, as you can hear. It does a great job up and down the box. The sound is just amazing. It is just ridiculous. I just can't help but be a child in this car. Alright Dave, come on. Let's just compose ourselves for 5 minutes, shall we? Later on. Here in the interior, it's very much a driver-focused experience. We have this centre-mounted screen, which is really sharply angled, so I'm not even sure if a passenger could see it. We have all of our controls at our fingertips. We have this very strange blade system for all the HVAC controls. I mean, I want to give Chevy props for not just basically getting rid of all these buttons and throwing them, in a forest of menus, but it's a really strange system. There are so many buttons along this column, and it was a little bit of a mission to find out which buttons controlled which side of the car. And I've only really just made the realization that at the very top, there's a very faint arrow that points this way and a very faint arrow at the bottom that points that way to help you along, which obviously that did the trick for me. Not. Then we have whatever you want to call this monstrosity, which houses our transmission controls. Now, rather than just a normal gear stick that you can pull back and forward depending on what you need, we have a stack of buttons, which if you want to put it in park, you press a button. If you want it in reverse, you pull a lever. If you want it in neutral, you push a button. And if you want it in drive, you pull a lever. And then, of course, we have a manual mode down here. I don't know, it feels all a little bit odd. And then next to that, we have our drive mode selector, which is hidden underneath a little leather-wrapped wrist rest is all I can call it, because the only way I can rationalize it being there is when you put your wrist on there, you can then get easy access to the touchscreen. Underneath that though, there is a little rotary dial that's kind of hard to maneuver. That will allow you to get through into your drive modes. Thankfully, the team at GMSV that I picked this up from, they actually already set the individual mode, which is basically how I would have set it up. So everything is basically in max attack, except for suspension, which is set to soft. And this is a Z51 package, which means we have all the fruit available here in Australia. So in the interior, we have lashings of carbon fibre, which is quite nice, to be honest. We have the GT2 seats, which I don't think they're going to be to everyone's taste. They are very, very tight. I'm not a small guy, and I kind of feel like I'm almost sitting on the seats rather than in the seats. I think if you are a body type that fits nicely within these bolsters, you're probably going to enjoy them. Again, we have more carbon fibre, which is quite cool. Now, storage-wise, there's not a lot to speak of. We do have a glove box way over there. We have a little phone charging port between the seats, which is actually quite handy. So you can just slot your phone in there. It's got wireless charging. It has wireless Apple CarPlay. So you kind of just get in this car, you put your phone there, it's set and forget, which is quite nice. Aside from that, we do have some door bins down here, which they're very difficult to get into, I would say, because they're not very tall. You've got to kind of contort your arm around a bit. I'm not really sure what you'd be putting in there, maybe your wallet or something like that. And then, speaking of this area of the car, even just to open the door, I mean, this shows you how Chevy's really trying to be supercar. Rather than just a simple door pull or anything like that, we have a little door pop button, which you press on that and then struggle with, and that then opens your door. A little bit odd. And in front of that, we have the controls for our front and for our boot. So because we have a mid-rear engine setup, we do have some storage up the front, storage at the back, which I'll show you now. It's not the most intuitive space. You kind of have to contort your things around. You definitely want to have soft duffel bags or potentially shopping bags rather than any kind of hard suitcase in this car. Now, another feature of the Z51 package is the fact that we have this Alcantara wrapped steering wheel. Personally, I'm not a fan of Alcantara wheels. I think if you're the first owner of the car, they're quite nice. I don't see it aging well. Again, I think if you're the second or third owner, you're going to get it. It's going to be pretty shiny. It's going to have some juices from your previous owners. It's just a bit yuck to think about. I'd much rather a leather wrapped unit. Overall, though, it's a strange boxed off shape, but it actually works really well when you're out on the road. So I actually quite like it. It reminds me of a Ford GT or something similar. And again, I guess the fact that Chevrolet, they're trying to be less mullet man and more Maranello, moving into the supercar space, it sort of makes sense that they would target the Ford offering. Other handy features we have in the interior, we do have a nose lift system just next to the center screen. The cool thing about that is you can actually commit locations to the car's memory. So if you have a driveway that you constantly need to lift the car up to get into, you can press it once, you can confirm that to memory, and then every time you arrive at that location, as long as you're doing under 40 k's an hour, I believe, it will then just lift it up nicely for you, which is a really cool feature. And the other cool feature, speaking of the lift system, is if you use it to get into a driveway and then you park up and you turn the car off, when you turn the car on, it will automatically re-lift the car. So you don't have to remember to do it. So I think that would have saved a lot of people crunching the front of their car because you get in and then you just park and you forget that you had to do it. The cool thing is it obviously realizes if you needed to lift your nose to get in there, you're going to probably need to lift your nose to get out. So very cool feature from Chevy there. And beyond the steering wheel, we have a digital gauge cluster, which is really crisp and really customizable. So you can have all sorts of information, whether you want to have a G meter, your fuel economy, your tire pressure and temperature. All of that is customizable depending on how you want it to be displayed, which is quite nice. But what I actually have been using the most is the heads-up display. So up on the windscreen we have our speed, our gear, our revs. We also do have a G meter, which is quite comical, but I've actually found that is really useful to use. Another feature that we have in this car, because visibility is, let's say, less than ideal, is we have a normal conventional mirror, but you can actually flick a button and it goes to a digital mirror. Now, the digital mirror actually does provide a much better view. It's very clear, it's very crisp, but I've personally found it's actually really disorientating. I'm not sure if it's because you're kind of focusing in a certain plane when you're driving, and then you've really got to change where you're focusing when you look in the mirror, which, I mean, you'd be doing, using a normal mirror anyway, but for some reason it just works when it's a normal mirror. It could also be that I'm just getting old, and because I have to use glasses when I'm at a computer, perhaps it's the same here, I'm not sure. I've just found that I'd rather take the visibility hit with the normal mirror than actually using the digital mirror and having a wider point of view. And we have quite a few drive modes available to us, and you can actually do your own custom setup. So that means I have everything in basically max attack as far as the engine goes, but I've got our suspension as soft as we can have it, which I think is a nice compromise. It's still nice and firm, so it doesn't feel like it's floaty or anything like that. You don't feel every little imperfection in the road, thankfully, but what I have found is that as you're pushing the car along, especially through a set of corners where the road isn't perfect, there's a lot of scuttle shake. So you kind of feel like the front and the back aren't really connected all that well. It's not too bad if the road is perfect, as I said. It's more when there's bumps in the middle of a corner that you really feel that disconnect. The other thing that I want to pick on though is the steering, because whilst it has nice weight, it just doesn't feel all that good. So when I tip it into a corner, I feel like I need to use more lock than I would expect. So it kind of feels like the steering is lagging behind the wheel, if that makes any sense. It's just not razor sharp like some of the other cars that we've had on the channel. Another element that I'm not wild about is the amount of tyre roar that comes through to the cabin. So we are running 19-inch wheels up front, 20-inch wheels out the back, so potentially you should just expect that. Now, Chevrolet have obviously thought about this because they've actually given you two tools at your disposal to help combat this. Number one is our Bose stereo. Does a great job, sounds really good even when you crank the volume. And the other, well, that's our engine. Because let's be honest, if you crank that, you can't hear anything. Now I know no one is going to be buying this car and thinking about fuel economy, but I want to talk about it because actually it surprised me. We have a 6.2 litre V8. This thing's going to drink. It sounds fantastic when you rev it all the way out, and you know you're not going to be able to help yourself but do that. So when you're doing that, yeah, she's thirsty. She will drink fuel. However, if you can be an adult, or if you can just calm yourself down, as I'm wafting along here at 80 kilometers an hour, cylinder deactivation means we're just running on 4 cylinders. I'm averaging under 10 litres per 100 Ks. And if you're on the highway, it'll act similarly. It'll just sip fuel as you go along. I mean, I say sip fuel, I'm talking about, it's all relative, right? But you get my point. It's actually pretty good. Then if you do put your foot down and you happen to glance at the fuel economy figure, you'll be going, oh, wow, that's a big number. But again, I assume that no one is going to care about that who buys this car. I feel like it just deserves a little bit of praise though for the fact that it can be quite economical if you need it to be. And this is one of the cars that just brings you joy as you drive it, and I think that's really important. So it's a car that just makes you want to have fun. You don't have to be doing stupid speeds to enjoy it. As you pull away from a set of lights or even just giving it a little squirt of the throttle, it sounds amazing and you just can't help but have a massive smile on your face. And I think that's fantastic. You know, I think in the world of EVs, in the world of being really serious and sensible, to have a car be a bit of a larrikin, that's awesome. And so there you have it, the 2024 Chevrolet Corvette. A car that I knew I was going to enjoy, but surprised me just how much the general public enjoyed. Then again, when it looks and sounds this good, who could blame them? Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please feel free to subscribe to stay tuned for more videos. I hope you have a wonderful day, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.